B'siyata d'shmaya, we're going to now get to the seventh, and it's for us the last emotion, which is of course the emotion of Malchus. It's the last one, but definitely the most important, and you will see why. There's a bunch of things that we're going to be mentioning in the beginning, and we're going to get back to them towards the end. So just sort of figure out how everything works and fits in like a jigsaw puzzle from the beginning to the end. So if there's anything you have a question on or don't understand, it's going to try to get to it towards the end. In the last few weeks, we have been dealing primarily with the emotions that are in the three triangles. There's the intellectual triangle, there's the emotional triangle, and then there is the practical triangle. Now we come to what's called the standalone. There's no triangle, it's by itself, it stands by itself, and that's Malchus. So we really have to understand two specific things. Number one, how do we define Malchus? How does it work? What does it do to us or for us? And number two, why is it alone? Why is it different to every other one of the emotions? All the emotions we've been discussing since day one have fit into a triangle with others. This one is alone. Why? So those are the two things that we're going to try in the next few minutes to try to really delve into. There is quite a few deep things over here. I'm going to try to repeat them a few times so we really get clarity over here, because it is a very, very important one. In the teachings of Kabbalah, they explain that the 7 emotions of the soul are divided into 2. It's 6 and 1. Similar to 6 days of the week, and then you've got Shabbos. 6 years in a cycle, and then you have the Shemitah year, the 7th year. In the Kabbalistic Sforim, they bring that the first 6 that we've been discussing until now, are always referred to as the masculine, and the 7th, Malchus, is the feminine. This does not mean male and female. We're not discussing male and female. We're talking about different parts of the neshama, different parts of the soul, feminine and masculine. Now, it does stand alone, but even though it stands alone, it's placed in the middle. So we've had all of the triangles, right? If you imagine big, wide triangles, you've got the Chesed and the Tiferes, and it would basically be in the line of Tiferes. It would be in the middle. It would be in the middle, even though it stands by itself. That's where it belongs. That's the energy it provides. What is it? How do we define it? How do we utilize it? And how do we direct it to do what it's meant to do best? So how do we translate it? The best translation, maybe, we could give, and we'll probably give quite a few definitions as well, of Malchus is leadership. Right? A king is a melech, a queen is a malka. Malchus means the ability to communicate or express one's thoughts, speech, or actions to another person or other people and to the world around them. So what Malchus really is, it's the implementation of everything that works inside us and inside our soul specifically, all the intellectual parts, all the emotional parts, all the feelings we experience inside us. Malchus is the ability to actually implement it. Malchus is often associated with confidence, leadership qualities, the ability to have influence on others, having a presence. There are people that walk into the room and there's like a presence there. All of these are connected and are a Malchus quality. What is the power of Malchus? So if you look into the Sifrei Kabbalah, they say that Malchus is compared to the moon. Why is it compared to the moon? Because Malchus, just like the moon, has no light of its own. People are even surprised to realize that the moon is actually not white. It's of course black, it's dark. It's only white because of the reflection of the sun. Now the moon has no light of its own. It's only, whatever it receives likewise from the sun, processes it and shines it further. That's what the moon is, and that's why we're comparing this midah, this Malchus, to the moon. Kabbalistically, the relationship between the sun and the moon is the same as what we're discussing. That is, the sun is the first 6 emotions, and the 7th is the moon, and that's Malchus. That means it has nothing of its own, but yet we find that it's the strongest one, and it goes to the depths of what our soul is all about. Again, we will explain. One of the Lubavitcher Rebbes, I don't remember now which one it was arrested in Russia for doing, of course, what he held to be the right thing to do. What is the right thing to do is to teach Torah publicly. And one of the specific things they found out about him and they arrested him for and got him into serious trouble was his idea that he would teach very much this idea of the 10 powers, the 10 energies of the soul. And he put Malchus at the bottom. And they were very upset in Russia. How can you put Malchus as kingship? It's kings, it's queens, it's Malchus. You can't put that at the bottom. And that's one of the things that they were very upset that he taught, because it doesn't make sense for Malchus to be at the bottom of the list. Hold that thought, we'll get back to it. So what definition can we give Malchus which will associate it with all of the other emotions we said and the ideas that we said a few minutes ago, like leadership and everything else, which are the symptoms of Malchus, but doesn't actually define Malchus. So if we want to define Malchus, it would be a processing mechanism. That's what it would be. In other words, what the power of Malchus does is it allows a person to take all of the other powers of the soul, to process them, and then to give it over to another world, right? Someone else or something else, another concept, an idea, an experience. That, in a nutshell, is, I guess, a definition of Malchus. So what it does is it takes all the other energies, all the emotions, the intellect, the feelings, everything like that we've been teaching and explaining over the last few weeks, which are in the world of the giver, that's you, and allows them to be expressed outside of yourself into someone or something else. For example, let's try to make it a bit practical. Okay, we'll discuss this as the main practical example, because I think this just is the best one, but of course it can be used in different ways. Speech and communication is very often used as an expression or a symptom of Malchus. Okay, so let's analyze for a moment speech. What is speech all about? So effective communication is something that we've discussed, I'm sure, in different settings over the years that you guys have been in yeshiva. You remember we've discussed this idea of effective communication. We've discussed it in various forms, but there's no question about it that effective communication is the most crucial part of any relationship that you have. Now, just like Malchus, words themselves have absolutely no content. There's nothing to words whatsoever. Intrinsically, a word has no meaning. They carry no content, but they just carry the content from me to you, or from you to someone else. For example, if I'm trying to convey an idea, or I'm trying to convey an emotion like anger, for example, or love. So what I'm trying to do is really give over intellect, or give over an emotion, right? And the words is what I utilize to be able to do that. Now, the words give me the ability to carry the content of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, the intellect from inside me, the emotions inside me, to you, or to the outside world, or to someone else. But they themselves have no meaning, and they have nothing. So in order to have effective communication, there needs to be an internal processing mechanism that can process everything going on inside us. It can make it organized, it can make it structured, now it can be communicated properly. So Malchus is the receiver. Malchus is what receives the other 9 powers and processes it effectively. For example, we find in Chinuch, we find this idea that kids are very often labeled with very, very bad labels. For example, you'll have a teacher that's taking a new class this year, and the teacher from last year will say, oh, that kid over there, oh my gosh, what a stupid kid, what a dumb kid, he knows nothing, doesn't understand anything. Now, they get labeled, but we know that's absolutely not true, because the child, when the new teacher can come in, could be like, what? That doesn't make any sense. The child is so clever, it's so deep, it doesn't make any sense. So what are they missing? They're missing a method of communication to show to the outside world how clever they actually are. What they're missing is, in other words, the processing that they're missing is Malchus. That's what they're missing. And therefore, if they're missing that, that is what shows to the outside world that they're dumb and they're stupid and they don't know anything, but they've got it all inside. Really, they're beautifully clever. They're just missing the process to be able to express it, to communicate it to the outside world. And therefore, people that lack Malchus lack the processing that allows it to organize everything so it's now ready to move on. And this is step number 1 in effective communication. right? Sometimes we have trouble. We have this in our own lives. You can recognize this. We have trouble expressing ourselves to other people. Like we find it difficult to express to people what we're feeling. We find it difficult to express what we're feeling because we ourselves are not sure what we're feeling. In other words, we can feel very angry, but we don't know why. We feel very overwhelmed, but we don't know why. We don't know how to process the feelings inside us to be able to communicate them to someone else. And that's why the very first step, practically, is to internally process everything so that it can then be brought forward. Now, that's step number one. We're going to get to a bunch of steps. The next step, after step number one, is to effectively communicate, is to take the processing that you process, that you've structured inside, put it into words, find the right words in order to express it. Now, remember, this has nothing to do with the person's understanding. The guy can have a genius mind. He understands everything. He gets it. No question about it. He can grasp intellectually the highest and most deep concepts, or even emotionally, he's with it 100%. But to put it into words, he finds it impossible. And that's malchus. Now, move on to another step. Once all of that has been processed, and once you find the right words to be able to express what you're thinking or what you're feeling, now the next stage is the confidence, to actually get it across confidently. For example, you can have people that are amazing, deep writers. They write the most deep concepts, but they just simply cannot get up and put two words together. They're not lacking the processing. That they can figure out. They know how to write the book. They wrote very deep books, right? There's no question whatsoever, but they're lacking the confidence to put it into speech, into words, and they're lacking the ability to put it forth to the outside world and to someone else. People, by the way, that are very unhealthy prefer to write an email or a WhatsApp rather than making a phone call because they don't want to or cannot express it verbally. Right? I generally do not allow chassanim to text. Obviously, a good Shabbos or whatever, I'm not talking about that, but like longer texts of communication by email and for sure not by WhatsApp, because they can be read in the wrong way. And also you're hiding behind this fact that you're not working on your malchus because you have to be able to work on your method of communication. I had a couple once that it was a very bad situation between this couple, and she sent me the texts that the husband was sending to her. I was completely shocked how somebody can put these words in a text. It was beyond me. It got to the stage when it was almost a divorce. Baruch Hashem, he fixed it, and now they're happily married with a kid. It's beautiful. But upon him, it's this is what it is. It's this idea of malchus that people are hiding behind a WhatsApp or an email simply because they can process it, they can write it, they can figure it out, but they can't express it. That's what they're missing. And they don't have the confidence or the presence to express it. And the final part, I think this is number 5, we've been going through the stages, the final part of malchus is to actually, you need someone to talk to. You need someone there to receive it, right? The first 9 powers of the soul are the giving part, right? It's an expression of who I am. All of that. From Chachma Bina V'das, which we didn't discuss, but for sure to Chesed, Gvur, and everything else that we've been discussing over the last few weeks, it's about me. It's about how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. It's about my relationship to myself, right? It's my relationship to the outside. But what Malchus does is it turns it all around. Malchus all of a sudden becomes the receiving mechanism because I don't only need to process it, but I need someone else to receive it. In Sifrei Kabbalah, they bring, for example, Avraham Avinu as the greatest example of someone who is a midas chesed. Avraham Avinu, mamash, exemplified this idea of chesed, of giving. And for example, the Torah's story of how after the Bris Milah, he wanted very much to have the guests in order to serve them. And the Rebbeinu Shalom made it that it was hot, it was boiling hot, there was no one there. No one be able to receive Avraham Avinu's chesed. So Avraham Avinu had a tremendous midah of chesed, but he couldn't express it to the outside world. And that's the example of Malchus. Now, Avraham Avinu had all the emotions. He didn't just have chesed, he also had gvur, and he had to send Rishmal out. And he had, for example, ways of endurance that we've been speaking about. He had Netzach and Hoid. He had everything. But there was no Malchus. There was no one to give it to. There was no one to receive it. Now, in Avraham Avinu, you could argue and say, well, very nice, that wasn't his fault. Hashem made it a situation that it was not meant to be, that anyone was there. Right? That's true. But sometimes we have parts of Malchus that, will allow us to process things and even find the right words. but we don't have the last few parts, which means that we have no one to receive it, and that's on us. Now, they describe, just to give you more of an explanation, Malchus is like a cup. A cup is a wonderful utensil, but a cup has absolutely nothing of its own. A cup can do nothing when it's empty. It has nothing. When you fill it up, so it now receives. Now that it's received, it can now give over to someone else, and that's how we explain that Malchus is the receiving mechanism. And now we can understand, let's go back to what we said in the beginning, that Malchus is nothing of its own. It's simply a processing mechanism, which is why all of the things that are associated with Malchus are empty on their own, because people are very confident. They're confident people. They have nothing to fill it with. A person can have a lot of Malchus, but if he doesn't have the previous 9 powers that we've been working on, at least most of them, he can't fill it with anything. On the other hand, a person can have a tremendous, very strong sense of the other 9 powers, but he's missing the concept of Malchus, so it doesn't go anywhere. That's the problem. That's why Malchus is a king, because a leader needs to have the midah of leadership. Because a leader has to be able to take, we said this many times, the right and the left. And that's why Malchus, even though on its own, it doesn't have a triangle, but it's in the middle. Why is it in the middle? Because it has to be able to take from the right and the left. Communication, it's not only what you say, it's also what you don't say. And that's the right and the left being utilized, and that's why Malchus is placed always in the middle, because it has both. A power of a leader, of someone that has influence on others, and we all have influence on others in different directions, in different levels, has to be able to make this balance. It's not what you give, it's also what you don't give, knowing what the situation requires. Malchus is the power to give, but also the power to withhold, and that's a true leader, a true king. That's why it's called Malchus, Lashon of king, because a melech is a leader, and a leader has to have this quality. Marriages can be enhanced, marriages can be destroyed because of too much Malchus or too little Malchus. If it's not exercised properly, it's too much, it's too little, it can be a disaster. That's why Malchus is, again, going back to what we said in the beginning of today, a feminine personality. Why? It's a receiver. The male is the giver, the female is the receiver, and that's why women are generally much better communicators because of that. And that's, by the way, how the Lubavitcher Rebbe explained when they took him away. How could you put Malchus at the bottom of the list? It belongs on the top. He said, you're right, but it's a receiver, so it needs to receive all of the other emotions that come above it. And therefore, even though we've been saying that Malchus is at the end of the day a receiver, the sources tell us that it's so much deeper into a human being than anything we have ever learned before until now. And I'll explain to you what I mean, and I'm going to ask you to listen carefully, because this is a Gavaldik Yesod, which is taking everything and putting it together. Human beings are much higher than malachim and much higher than animals. A human being has the ability to be godly. We have the ability to be like Hashem. Chazal tell us many Marim for this. We have the ability to do that. Now, to be godly means not to be defined, not to be limited, right? Because that's the Rabbeinu Shalom. The uniqueness of a human being is to go beyond my world into the world of someone else. Not just to talk to someone else, but to talk to the world of someone else, to understand their perspective, to lose my definition or go beyond my definition, right? And enter the world of another human being. A malach cannot do that. An animal for sure cannot do that. And that's why a human being is higher than an animal and higher than a malach, than an angel, because we have the ability to go beyond ourselves, to go outside of ourselves. We're not defined. And everything created in this world is defined, right? A table is a table because it has certain characteristics. That's why it's a table. It's not a chair. The Rabbeinu Shalom is the only thing that is completely undefined. A human being, tells us the Tanya and many other Sforim, has a chelek, has a spark of the Rabbeinu Shalom inside. And that spark is what gives a human being the ability to be godly. I always wondered, when you learn the Tanya, the first parak aleph, what does that mean? It's nice, it's a vaad, it's cute, it's a song. But L'maisa, I'll tell you what it means. According to what we're saying, this is pshat. that the reason that we have a chelik of Hashem inside us is because us as a human being have the ability to be like Hashem, to be godly, which means to be undefined, which means to go beyond my world into someone else's. That's godly. In other words, yes, of course, you're born with certain dispositions, you're born with certain character traits, but you have the ability to go beyond them. And the uniqueness of a human being is that they can change and they can go beyond their definition. And the ultimate expression of change is not for yourself, but rather when you change to respond to the world of someone else, you go out of your world and enter somebody else's world. That's communication. That's real, true, effective communication. Is not just to say the words. The words mean nothing alone, but to talk to someone else, enter their world, see what they need, and that requires your own understanding, your own processing of your own world, and that requires more than anything malchus, to be able to express it to someone else, to help to influence that person, which is why Onkelos tells us that the ruach that is breathed into us when the Rebbeinu Shalom created us makes us different because of speech, as I state in Onkelos. And that sums up basically, and that is the essence of a human being, is the malchus, because your malchus will be as good as your chesed. Your malchus will be as good as your gvura and your netzach and your hoid, because you need to develop those ones first. Malchus is the receiver. An empty cup is nice, but it doesn't do anything and it can't give to anyone. And therefore, Malchus will not help you for all the previous koiches, all the previous powers, but it will take what you already have, what you've already perfected, and will process it, give it the ability to be able to take what we have and place it in the world of someone or something else. It's the essence of any relationship that we will ever have in this world. Malchus brings everything together. It takes all of the powers of the soul and allows us to be able to use it healthily to develop ourselves and to integrate it with the other powers and into other people as well. And with that, we will be able to have, Be'ezus Hashem, very healthy emotions in ourselves and develop incredible relationships and situations that we're ever in. When we take these, to use them, they're not easy. We have to go over these constantly again and again. But when we do go over them, you will find that you're noticing certain things that you're doing and certain situations that come up, how you respond. And the more you do that, the more you recognize how you have to work on it, integrate all of the powers together, and that makes the person the most healthiest emotionally person that he can be.